January 15th, 2015, regular meeting of the Granada Community Services District Board of Directors is called to order. Roll call, please.
President Leonard Warren.
Present.
Vice President Matthew Clark.
Here.
Director Tim Blanchard.
Here.
Director David Seaton.
Here.
Director Rick Wellman.
Here.
And the Sustainable General Manager Chuck Duffy, and William Parkin, for our council Jonathan Whitwer, and I'm the administrator Gary Pineda.
And prior to the regular meeting, we had a special meeting for closed session. Does council have anything to report out?
No reportable action.
Thank you. I don't have any speaker slips for non-agenda public comment, but
So you're about to.
Chris can fill it out after he speaks.
Howdy everyone, Chris Johnson, resident of El Granada, also member of the Mid-Coast Community Council. When I saw Leonard, can't even remember what night it was.
Monday, MCC special meeting.
Monday, right, the Monday night meeting. I was mentioning that I was going to attend a San Mateo County Parks Commission mini parks meeting on Thursday, and Leonard said, "What is that? Could you come and tell us about that?" So, you know, given that the new community services district here, it's probably a good idea to just give you a little bit of lowdown. And Marlene is here, so you know she can definitely fill in the serious additional details. The mini park subcommittee is basically an ad hoc committee for, descended from the Parks and Rec Commission. And the purpose of this is currently San Mateo County Parks and Recreation does not have Parks Department, excuse me, does not have a policy to deal with mini parks. They are also known as pocket parks, you could call them that. And so Neil Maralese and Maida Okelo, who are commissioners on the Planning Commission, the Parks and Rec Commission. Sorry, I was at the Planning Commission last night. On the Parks and Rec Commission, gathered this group together to try to come up with some ideas for a mini park policy that could then be presented to the Parks and Rec Commission, and who would then chew it over and make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors about that. So we've been working since, I want to say October, maybe November, no, October I think, at least, maybe September, meeting once a month to kind of flesh out what are the issues that we need to deal with, and then kind of coalesce that into some kind of, you know, policy sketch that we could deliver to the Parks and Rec Commission. I just want to read you the members, the committee members, because Leonard had asked about that. Nick Arridge, he is a member of the Pescadero Municipal Advisory Council. So he's in District 3. Neil Maralese is in District 3. I'm in District 3. Maida Okelo is District 4. Linda Lopez, District 4. Laura Kaplan, District 4.
What territory is District 4?
I'm going to say that's Fair Oaks. Yeah, North Fair Oaks. The largest unincorporated part, the most populous unincorporated part of the county, not largest in geographical area. So districts 3 and 4 are the two districts represented on this ad hoc committee because it has the most amount of unincorporated space. And so again, this is a county policy dealing with just unincorporated areas of the county, because obviously the cities in the county have their own situation going on. So some things that we have looked at, and Marlene has been there at just about every meeting, every meeting. So this last meeting that we had today, we're really like starting to put the draft policy together, and I'm not going to go into all the details on that. We don't have the policy fully fleshed out yet, but you know, some things that we're thinking about is how would a piece of property be brought into the system? And so we were talking today about an application process. Does the county bring that forward? Does an applicant bring that forward? How, you know, ongoing management, agreements with a needs assessment. So Leonard, you had been wondering, like, you know, why is the county doing that when, you know, we've just set up the GCSD and, you know, we'll be able to do that here. Yes, that's one of the things we discussed, that where there is another entity available to do that mini parks job, that entity would be the one that the county would want to do this. County is looking to only do this where there is a need, and then to have agreements and arrangements with any involved entities to make sure that that works out. One thing I want to mention, without going into too many other details, that I think is a really helpful and important part of this mini parks policy, specific to mini parks, is we discussed over the last couple meetings that if a mini park is to be established, that there be a friends group, a non-county associated neighborhood type group that is officially associated with that park, and then would partner with the county to work out the management of that facility. So I think that's a really good idea, given what happened in Lost Beach Park. Sure, there was a citizens group, and they were a great citizens group until that iteration of the group, their children timed out and they lost interest, and then you know, it fell apart there for a couple of years. So with this mini parks policy, you know, we're trying to strengthen that up a little bit, so that the idea would be that the friends group would kind of be the boots on the ground and maybe help out with a lot of the, you know, trash and picking up stuff and routine kind of things like that. But that's something that we're trying to flesh out. So then where does the county come in?
Does the committee have an adopted definition of mini park?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. Yes, we're working on that today. I can give you the definition that we've been starting from. It got edited today, and we're going to be looking at draft documents based on our edits today. So I don't have the exact wording for you. Mini park, small, less than an acre or less. Small, specialized facilities that serve a concentrated population or specific groups. This definition says such as tots or senior citizens, but serves specific groups, usually located within neighborhoods. And this is where, and this says, and in close proximity to apartment complexes and other densely populated areas. But as you can imagine, that was one of the things we were talking about today. Okay, you know, we're talking with, so if we want to develop a park in Pescadero, it's not going to be in close proximity to apartment complexes. And then what is a densely populated area? A densely populated area in North Fair Oaks is going to be a lot different than the same definition for Pescadero. So but in general, less than an acre. And we discussed, like, should we have a minimum requirement? Does it need to be at least 2,500 square feet or something like that? And we decided, no, that's something that, you know, there needs to be some wiggle room there. And, you know, it could turn out that somebody has a great idea for a 300 square foot something. Let's not, yeah, I mean, it seems crazy, but let's not rule that out. I mean, look, we need a top end, I think, but I don't think we need to worry too much about a bottom end. Because we also discussed there would be kind of an application process where a friends group is going to, unless the county finds some beautiful piece of property that they just can't wait to develop into a neighborhood pocket park, and they just need to find somebody to bring that to them, to the planning Parks and Rec Commission to get them interested. The idea is that this friends group would basically be the applicant and make the case, make the needs case. And so in the course of making that needs case, they would discuss, you know, what is the size of this thing? What is it, you know, we have a basic idea of a site plan and what we're going to put on there, and here's our ideas for, you know, what we could bring to the table as far as management and fundraising. You know, these are details that that we have discussed. We've discussed whether we need to include that in the policy, or whether that is something that once we sketch out the rough outline, then the Parks and Rec commissioners or the Board of Supervisors would get down into the nitty gritty. But I don't think we need to get into that here. The idea is that the county recognizes the need for pocket parks, neighborhood parks in unincorporated areas, and they want to do something about it, and we're trying to help them develop a policy to make that happen.
And you know, since we may have people watching that haven't been following this district through the whole reorg application process, pocket parks is one of the things that's been talked about here for quite some time. So it's all consistent. And I think one of the things that we will hopefully be looking at sooner rather than later, is implementing Daniel Burnham's vision of the 5 boulevard medians being linear parks.
Yeah, great.
And it sounds like those, if you divide them up properly, could be considered pocket parks.
Yeah, I would think so.
If you don't say the whole 8-block long thing is one park.
Well, I mean, you know, less than an acre, I don't know what the square footage on that and what those would be, but.
Well, the Balboa right-of-way is 200 feet wide, and so
Leonard, I don't know if we can make this a full discussion item thing.
Yeah.
True,
Sorry.
I had asked Chris to just report on the committee
Right.
since I didn't know anything about it.
It's a great idea.
So the intention is to have this draft, in a, you know, relatively finalized condition, as much as a draft can be, to present to the, and then it will be presented by Neil Marilees to the, Parks and Rec Commission at their meeting on February 5th. And we'll see what happens there. They may kick it back to us for more, they may have some ideas, some revisions, or they may decide to go for it. The idea is that, for budgeting purposes and also for the general park strategic plan, you know, we wanna try to move it along as quickly as possible. We don't wanna rush it. There's not really a reason to super rush it. But if we could get it in time, Marlene was saying that, you know, if we could get it approved at the February meeting, or at least incorporated at the February meeting, it would really help for budgeting in the coming year.
Well, I appreciate your coming to your 3rd meeting of the week and giving us the report. Could you, when there's something significant new to report, keep us updated on that?
Yep, I sure will.
And I'm gonna ask Marlene to try and arrange something. Do you think you could arrange for Penn TV to video the commission meeting?
I can look into it.
I think that'd be good.
Yeah.
I have a question. Chris, has there been any discussion of how the county may relate to, say, a special district that has Parks and Rec powers and with this mini park program?
Right, so it's my understanding, based on, actually we had Martha Poyatos at the meeting today, and she gave us a LAFCO kind of primer, that the county's position is that, you know, you're the entity to handle that in your district. And, you know, that's one of the reasons that this district exists. And so it's my understanding that the county is not interested in kind of crossing over that line. They, you know, you've gone through the measures that you needed to do to form this district, and it is a LAFCO district, and that is a county, you know, affiliated entity, and the county is more than wants to, that's what they want, is for you to handle pocket parks within your boundaries. And the county is, because the county just wants to look at unincorporated, unserved areas of the county.
That being said, I still think it'd be very useful for us to have the documents that when and if they get adopted with, you know, just the background and definitions, et cetera.
Absolutely, and I know that you have a contract with county parks going forward, so that doesn't preclude any relationship. But the county, the way I understand it, the county's not looking to come into the GCSD district and try to do anything in there, create anything new or build something or take a piece of property and make something else. They would be looking to you and other special districts and even other entities, school districts and whatnot, to handle as much as they can. The county really just wants to serve the unserved need.
Thanks.
All right.
Great, Chris.
Good evening. I'm Marlene Finley, Director of San Mateo County Parks. It's good to see all of you again. I just came for the public comment period to give you an update on the work that we're doing for you under the direction of Chuck Duffy, and now we're working with Delia too. Per the agreement that we have with the Granada Community Services District, County Parks is currently working on a newsletter to introduce the Community Services District. It'll be, you'll be reviewing the draft of that. Also, we're working on a survey which will most likely be included with the newsletter to get a better understanding of what's most important to the community members as far as parks and recreation. And then you can use that to provide the priorities that you would like county parks to do under the agreement, what you'd like to get us to get started on first. So that's what I came for tonight, is to let you know that we're currently working for you. We met with Chuck in November, and our staff's been working on the newsletter and the survey, and I'd be happy to report at future meetings on updates, and looking forward to the priorities that you set for us to do. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any chance that you can stick around for item 2 on the agenda?
I'd love to, yes.
Great.
You're the one.
Any other community members for items not on the agenda? Well, it's that time of,
Do you want to report that you appointed the ad hoc committee?
okay, I've appointed an ad hoc committee of Director Matthew Clark and Director Rick Lohman to be working with the fire district on cooperative use of the what's commonly referred to incorrectly as the post office lot, which is
The lot next to the post office.
yeah, starts on Portola next to the post office, runs all the way down to Coronado, and so they're discussing that with people from the fire district on how we can both utilize the property. Quarterly, we have a recycle local drop-off event for stuff that you would otherwise have to drive up to the recycle yard in Pacifica on Palmetto. And it's the fourth, I always have to think about this, it's the fourth Saturday of every quarter, which means it's January 24th. And there will be flyers in various places around town, and probably an ad in the newspaper, I guess. Delia? Yep. And I don't want to try and read everything here, but basically it's the things that are impractical or not eligible to for curbside pickup. Wait a minute, who's got curbs in El Granada? Like I said, you'd otherwise have to drive them up to the recycle yard. So they take a lot of different things, and it's actually cooperative between this district, Recology, and Strawflower Electronics. Yeah, it actually says that at the bottom. So Strawflower Electronics takes all of the electronic stuff that can be recycled, and no fees are involved because they can take it off and make money off of it that way. So, you know, sometimes when you dispose of things like CRT monitors that could have up to 8 pounds of leaded glass, you may have to pay a disposal fee, but Strawflower does it and doesn't charge us, so that's a good deal. So that's Saturday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. On the district-owned property at the foot of, it's on Obispo Road at the foot of Avenue Portola. And I have one other thing that I guess I'm going to have to bring up during public comment, and maybe staff can say, no, this will fit under some other agenda item. Issues with the new garbage bins. I don't know if all the directors saw it. There was email from one constituent who was very concerned about the new cans not being raccoon-proof, and sure enough, a few days later, I got a phone call from someone else saying that the raccoons tipped over her can and made a big mess. So I think that staff's going to need to talk to Recology and see what can be worked out for fasteners that people could use if they feel it necessary, that the pickup guys won't have a problem with.
All right.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is. It's obviously a problem in certain parts of the district. Well, we have to sort of get buy-in from the drivers.
I emailed the constituent who emailed all of us to ask him if he'd had a response from Ecology. he wrote back and said, yes, their suggestion is bungee cords.
Okay,
So however you can get it to work. So he said, I'll see what I can do about it. I haven't heard from him.
okay, well, that's useful information if they're okay with bungee cords.
Well, people with regular, of the various kinds of garbage cans that people had, there were a lot of bungee cords being used.
And so were the drivers careful to make sure the bungee cords didn't get lost?
Yeah,
They just take them off.
they were thrown on the
It's your
ground
fault.
right there, yeah.
Okay,
I also don't roll my can out until the morning.
Yeah.
I
That works,
just leave
but-
the trash can inside because we got nasty raccoons.
that works for morning people.
Yeah. I always
Got
had
till 10
worse
o'clock.
trouble with the neighborhood dogs.
When the notice went around to everyone, if I may just throw.
Well, I don't know that you're gonna get picked up on camera.
Oh, okay. When the notice went out to everyone, it was an indication that the garbage unit is quite a small cart, and that you could contact this district and get a larger one. And it might be that a small one is more easily tipped over by a raccoon. You might try getting a larger one, and maybe the weight and girth and so forth of that might solve the problem. But I just offer that as a suggestion.
Okay, any further non-agenda comments? All right, we will move to item 1. Unless we want to consider reordering the agenda for Marlene. Okay. Item 1, consideration of a resolution ordering even-numbered year elections for Board of Directors.
Okay, at our last meeting, your board asked staff to bring back a resolution changing the district's election year from odd to even years to more closely align with the major elections in San Mateo. So I've had Jonathan draft this resolution for the board's consideration.
Does he have one button that prints the word whereas? I see Bill smiling. That means yes. Some people have asked me if this is just for cost savings, and I don't know if Delia was able to find out what the difference in cost might be, but the motivating factor here is increased turnout. The people that have been leaning on me about this say that we'll have a lot more people voting in our elections if our elections are in even years. So that's why this is on the agenda here, and we'll probably save some amount of money. It probably won't be very much, although the cost differential between even and odd is going to get worse as more districts shift to even year elections. But even at that, it's still not likely to be enough money that would be a justification for doing this. The justification is increased turnout.
Half Moon Bay did this recently too, so we're moving in the right direction, I think. And if there's a little cost savings, that's great. But as you said, the main thing is, some of the turnouts have been pretty abysmal.
So did they
gets
get
everybody.
better turnout? Hmm?
Better than the rest of us.
Directors?
When we're ready, I would move to proceed with this.
So the motion would be to adopt the resolution, the title there.
That's written. I'll say that I'm for it. If there is a cost savings, well, there will be a cost savings undoubtedly, so you can't be against that. But I do think that voter participation will be increased, and we're all hoping that there will be greater community participation and scrutiny, because we've now got Parks and Rec authority, and so it makes sense to me to move the elections to where more people will come out and vote. And I don't know about election administration will be easier, but yeah,
I think we should do it. Is that a second?
oh, you already moved?
I didn't actually hear,
Yeah.
I didn't actually hear the formal motion, but,
Move that we adopt
If
it.
he made it, I'll second, sure.
so Rick, you're,
Amend the motion to adopt the
so
resolution.
Rick's motion is to adopt resolution number 2015-001, resolution ordering even-numbered year elections for board of directors.
That's what I said, yes.
And that's what Matthew seconded, right?
Yes.
Any further discussion? Okay, those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item 2, consideration of improvements to the district's Burnham Strip property. I asked for this to be on the agenda, and then I've since heard that some part of this is potentially premature because of what the county is currently working on our behalf. So there's actually two parts to this. You know, one of them is what I proposed for some benches and tables, and the other is, I have it on the map here as bollards, but I doubt if we're gonna go that direction. So which part of this do we wanna take first? You see there's the key at the bottom there.
How does it, I mean, should we be doing this now, or do we need to wait for, coordinating with the county?
Well, that was the
That was the
discussion we
question.
had that Leonard alluded to, is that we've got this process we're putting in place, which is going out with the newsletter and soliciting public opinion and whatnot. And once we get that public opinion in by the end of February, beginning of March, then we can kind of refine our ideas and implement this stuff. And that being said, as I said to Leonard before the meeting, if we're buying $1,500 worth of picnic benches, it's not, you know, it's not like we're building a community center before we solicit public input, so. But I think we should let the process play out. I don't know if it matters if we wait a couple months, so.
Well, one of the things that I'd kind of like to toss on the table for discussion, see if it goes anywhere, and potentially Marlene can comment on this, is whether we could put some less than permanent benches out there as a trial to see how much use they get. Is there any interest in doing that? I would certainly like to do that.
Can I make a recommendation?
Please.
To manage for public use and to have a place where people sit or they gather to eat and spend time, I would recommend you do a hazard assessment first for the trees. And have an arborist look at the trees for falling limbs or any, because once you invite people by putting out furniture like that, and for them to sit there, it's just a prudent way to manage,
Well,
would be to look at for hazards.
This would be far enough away, there's no trees near it.
Okay, I didn't get the package, I don't know, I don't have the map, so I don't know what you're I know there's
Yeah,
some.
it's in a flat area.
Okay,
Well,
I'm sorry.
for
I didn't
the-
get
It's a good point.
For the people watching this video in a few days, let me point on the big map to where I'm suggesting.
That would be helpful, because
And I don't know how well I'm gonna be heard from that far away. This is Avenue Porthole, the post office is right here. The ad hoc parking area is there, the skateboard ramp is right here. And so the Avenue Portola drainage has created a vegetated area here. So what I'm suggesting, the benches over here on the other side. And so the closest thing, and you can't really call it a tree, is the vegetation there. But it's nothing that towers that could possibly fall down. The only trees are the big stuff over here. And, you know, so we're talking a couple 100 feet away from anything that is seriously a tree. Chris, microphone?
So.
You don't have to lean over, but.
Oh, right. I should know that by now, right? But I do think that Marlene brings up a good point, which is if you put tables and chairs out, it is inviting people to go there, and just for your, unfortunately, liability rules the world. And so, yeah, that area is flat, but it's got a lot of gopher holes, it's ridged, it's got weeds and stuff. I mean, I'm just picturing, my mom, oh, there's a nice picnic table, walking out there, and she's gonna like break her ankle in a so I would feel like, unfortunately, it's just a picnic table, right? I mean, come on, but I feel like you would need to like grade a path out there and put down some DG and grade a flat area for the table, so when people sit at it, it's not doing this, type of thing. I mean, I'm fully supportive of doing something and like showing, that you're here for the community and this is why you're a GCSD. And I hate liability, and I hate liability being the tail that wags the dog. But it's a prudent point that, you're here for the long run, and somebody, that just had a couple of beers at Hop Dogma is gonna walk out to that picnic table and roll their ankle, and it's gonna be, council's gonna be employed have something to do for the next couple of years.
I'm looking to this side of the table when you said hop dogma.
Hey, I mean, it could be me, so I just say, I hate liability, but even a simple picnic table, I think there's gotta be some amount of prep work.
Well, for the trial stuff, I was just suggesting a couple benches, but can GM and council comment on the liability angle?
Yeah, we have some. And that's why you have insurance. So there is a liability there, but just made a note to myself actually to talk to the insurance company about this. So we'll talk to the insurance company about this, but at the end of the day, that is indeed why you have insurance. So there's a chance, but the chance exists right now, parking their car and getting out, really, may attract more people, but I don't know about that.
And we can just put all 4 legs in gopher holes. Dale, microphone.
We're in the right place this time. I am Dale Ross. There is another point I'd like to make above the liability is that since it's only maybe 2 or 3 months away before we have something together in terms of a survey, we wait to see what the demand is for that type of activity, here or there or different places. And there might be an adverse effect of putting something out there now before there's any idea what the demand will be. It might be a public reaction that is sort of like the Peggy Glee song, is that all there is? Really? So I think it's probably you want to have the full strength of a survey and the full strength of the public being asked and acted upon, providing input to the whole process.
I'd like to agree with him on that.
Yeah, I hadn't thought about the is that all there is angle. What do all the directors think? Is that a significant concern?
I'd rather, since we've been talking about going through the process for 2 months now, why not just follow it? I can see people saying, well, wait a minute, you just put a bunch of park benches out there. I'm not worried about the liability as much as, hey, you said you were gonna take public input.
Right.
So where's the survey?
And
We're doing the survey, do the survey.
I spoke with Leonard before the meeting on this, and he said he's getting people saying, what are you guys doing, what are you guys doing? I want everyone to understand, this is a process. This is not something you go toss some things out here. This is a process, and we've started that process, and Marlene's, got the newsletter coming and things like that. So that's, what are you doing? We're doing the process, and the process is the newsletter, solicitation of public input, and then going forward and deciding on what we want to do.
So
I had several thoughts looking at your drawing, Leonard, and one, I just wrote down ADA. I think we have to consider our general policy and requirements on accessibility. So, and Dale just brought up a path, may be appropriate if we decide to do this.
there is a pretty well-worn footpath that basically runs right next to where I'm suggesting.
Right.
It has to be a real path, like the
yeah.
Coastside Land Trust put in Old South Town over there. It's all thinged in the crushed gravel, and it's ADA compliant, and it's beautiful. It looks great.
And I think we should hold off and go through the process as well, but I wanted to point out that unless you put up bollards or some sort of fence like this, People are gonna drive their cars right out to those tables.
Well, funny, that's kind of why this is all one agenda item.
Yeah, so it's all tied together, and I'm glad that you are, you put in bollards here, but then you took pictures of these
Well,
kind of fences.
I put in bollards because that's what I had in mind, and then I talked to some community member, Dan, who basically made some, let's say, harsh comments about bollards. So I said to myself, all right, we can do something different.
Well,
And
yeah.
the goal, let's talk about the goal. The goal is not
Right.
putting bollards up to define the property line. The goal is to limit people, because we've already got the ad hoc parking lot over here. The goal is to limit people from starting to use this other section as an ad hoc parking lot.
Which is an intermittent problem, particularly construction trucks.
And there's a couple issues there. There's that issue, and there's also the fact that if they drive a little further over there, they're going over the wet weather flow management project. So, you know, there's a couple issues there. So the issue is, how do we keep people off that? And we've talked about maybe putting up a no trespassing sign or a tow-away sign or something like that, rather than sprinkling bollards throughout the current strips. And that's the problem we're trying to solve.
My personal feeling is the signs aren't gonna work. And so what I did yesterday afternoon is I drove around Princeton and took photos of alternative things that aren't bollards. And I think all but one of them are rope fences. So on the first picture that's numbered 1 is along West Point. This is actually directly across from our Princeton pump station, or Sam's Princeton pump station. I particularly don't like that because it's a steel cable and everything's painted yellow. And I think the yellow would just be horrid in this location here. Picture number 2, okay, picture number 2 is at the edge of Pothole parking lot. Some people call it Mavericks parking lot, but I'm gonna keep calling it Pothole parking lot until it's not Pothole parking lot. And so these wooden posts are actually, I think, less than 2 feet high. So, you know, they're not visually obtrusive at all, but they would do the job in keeping four-wheeled vehicles out of the area. Picture number 3, I think this was taken next to West Point. There's a business on the ocean side of Princeton. So there's a bunch of diagonal parking off of Princeton Avenue, and so they've put this up between the diagonal street parking and their property. The bottom one, I left the fire hydrant in it for scale. You can see that those poles are really tall, and I'm not pushing for anything that tall, but it's just another illustration of the type of thing that's in use in the area. Then the picture numbers are under the staple. I assume this is picture number 5. This one is along Capistrano Road next to the closed-off driveway down into the Harbor District parking lot. And you can see from the handrail here that these posts are also only about 2 feet high. And I think that's a really good model. I really want to push for something low that in our particular case, anybody could easily step over it. They could easily pick up a bicycle and put it on the other side. But it has to be something that's not at all visually obtrusive in any way. But I think it's really important to do something as a physical barrier to keep the vehicles out of there, because if we're not careful, the whole property is gonna get taken over for a parking lot, and it's not supposed to be a parking lot. The land use plan, the community plan, everything shows it as a community park, not a visitor serving parking lot. And we need it as a community park. So the last photo, photo 6, it's kinda hard to tell from the angles, and it was taken a little late in the day yesterday, but this is taken from downhill from the post office And so the fire station is off frame to the right, and it's this stretch here where there's no curb on Obispo. So the curb starts somewhere around the end, at the edge of frame, and then over here is the vegetated Avenue Portola drainage that cuts all the way across the property. So basically, I think we need to block that off, and then we need to block off the, what most people would call the northern edge. It's actually on the compass, pretty much the western edge, where there's another private parcel there with some periodic nasty stuff going on.
And the reason, I was gonna comment that bollards are expensive, at least semi-permanent on the west end there. They won't even serve the purpose, because the problem I've observed there are two-wheel vehicles, not four-wheel
Well,
vehicles. You can't
right.
put bollards close enough together to keep motorcycles
Yeah.
out, so.
So I have,
A low fence should do it, though.
yeah, I have totally abandoned the proposal for doing bollards.
Okay.
Can I make a suggestion then, in line with what we've talked about before? Would you like to have our attorney at some point in time tell us what kind of sign we could put up there that would allow us, that if people did park on that area, that would allow us to ticket them or tow them, and see if that works? Because that's probably cheaper, faster, easier. If that does the job, then that does the job, and you're not scattering whatever, maybe bollards, stakes, ropes, all about.
Well, there's,
If that works, it works, and if it doesn't, then we can discuss further measures.
well, yeah, if that's the only thing I can get support for from at least two other directors, then we can go there, but, there's one other issue, which is advertising trucks that get parked on the Caltrans right away, and they have to drive across our property to get there.
Well, right, but that's why I'm saying the sign would say.
The
something
sign is
like
not gonna stop them from driving across our property.
It'll say no trespassing, and, you know, I'm just suggesting it, that that's a measure we could try for a few months to see, does that work? And if it doesn't, then we could go up to.
Now,
Let's
I also,
ask our council whether a fence, a sign, or what rises to the degree it's a CEQA project. Because when I first looked at this, I thought, oh, that's a CEQA project, we're gonna have to do a document. And my suggestion was gonna be, let's not do a document for this amount of work or change. Let's, while we're at it, you know, particularly, I'd like to know where the wetlands restrictions are on our property out there, so.
I suspect the wetlands are all on Caltrans part.
I'd
But
like to,
Remember
don't
when we
think
did
so.
the doggy pot things, we had to do a CUP.
And the doggy pot is another suggestion I would have if we were gonna bring people out there, or invite people out there.
There is one across the highway, so if we put one on the property, it should be at the Obispo side.
when we did the,
So would we need to
Highway
do
ones.
CEQA, you think? Sorry.
no, when we were doing the Highway 1 discussions about Lost Beach and Montera, one of the objections people brought up was the plan they presented would have required 59 signs in that couple mile thing. My personal feeling is if we can avoid signs,
Yes.
a bunch of signs, that would be my preference. Even if we had to do these low rope fences for most of the property, I think that's much more appealing looking. And if it does the job, I would be voting for, one of the rope fence,
Okay.
configurations that's low and just,
Or,
once we get down to the final plans, like what are we gonna do with the parking lot and things like that.
or Leonard didn't bring these up, but the last two pictures
Oh,
in here
right.
that's what Caltrans did at their end.
No, actually, the county did that, when there used to be a used car for sale parking lot
Right,
down
but
there.
that is a Caltrans
And
property.
so the county put in logs, but specifically, the reason I took these pictures is to show that the logs rot out.
And
But
That's
in
why the
in
pictures are here.
15 years,
Oh, okay. Now, maybe we can send the county into Quarry Park upper area with a chainsaw, because I don't think the eucalyptus will rot out.
well, they're gonna have to take out a couple of the trees that blew down last month in the median strips.
Oh, I'll have to drive around, I haven't seen them. So, the logs are another alternative. There'll have to be some accommodation for, the sewer authority to get their maintenance vehicles in very occasionally, and so there would have to be some sort of opening in the logs to, you know, with a padlocked wire or something, I don't know. I really like the low-strung rope fence in terms of aesthetics. But, Jim, David, say something.
Are we voting to do this tonight?
Well,
or is this part of the plans that we
I
should
need to
wait
try
on?
and figure out what we have at least 3 votes to do.
Because I don't, the item I had on the agenda is too vague for us to be voting on that, so.
Right. I'd rather hold off as part of the community plan too. I mean, these are all great ideas. I
Well-
personally don't like the logs that much, but I prefer one of the rope fence options that's, you know, it doesn't have to be a wooden post, it can be one of those, you know, fake plastic wood posts.
Could something like this be incorporated into the survey in terms of saying, you know, getting people's input on, here are 5 options, which one would you prefer in terms of something like that? or-
You mean a specific question of if we're going to block off the property, which of these?
Yeah, something like that.
That might be an interesting question. I'll be surprised if rope fence isn't the winner.
Yeah.
So, you know, one of the reasons that I'm kind of pushing this now is the district has agreed to have the county arrange with Caltrans to use part of the property for the staging area for the Surfers Beach Protection Project, Shoreline Protection Project. And during peak demand, you know, a nice sunny summer weekend day, people are going to be looking for more parking, and I really, really think we need to keep the parking from expanding. This section here, on you know, across the street from the fire station, is fairly green right now, but if you go out there today, which I did, because I wanted to make sure you can't drive over the Avenue Portola drainage channel, and in one spot with a big enough truck you can, there's ruts in there. It appears that the same clowns that have been doing the donuts and digging the big hole in the ad hoc parking area are also out there across from the fire station doing the same thing. And I urge everyone here to go out and look at the damage to the really recent grass that's growing there. Nice green grass, and it's seriously impacted by vehicles that don't belong there. And by the way, the guys that were doing the donuts in the other section, one of them lives in El Granada, and I know his name, and the other one is a friend of his who lives in Pacifica.
Do we, could we get some quotations for, I mean, getting it started without any, we can just quote what the fencing, you know, would cost and get some options, get some materials started,
Right.
so we can move forward, so February or March meeting, we'll have some data and we can make a final decision to go or no go.
Well, you said before you wanted to wait till after the survey, right? So,
Right.
I mean, so we're gonna have to discuss, I'll have to work with Marlene to decide what that survey question's gonna be. I think question 1 is, I guess you wanna give them the choice of do you want it roped off, I'll call it roped off for now. And what type of roping, fencing would they like? So, and just gonna step in, so Marlene's gonna have a draft of the newsletter / survey for us next week. We're gonna take a look at it, go back and forth, and then disseminate it to your board for comments back from each of you to us. So then you can take a look then as what the wording is for this stuff, and, you know, give us your comments. And then we can consider it, at probably not the March meeting, but the April meeting, as maybe part of the plan we're going. Is that good?
I think that's fine.
Okay.
So Marlene, does the county have any standard for what is used in similar requirements in county parks?
We have common practice, we don't have a standard, but we could provide some examples and what thinking, you know, what criteria we use to select different materials in different situations.
Yeah, I think it might be beneficial, since whatever we do, it's employees of some county department. I don't know, does County Parks have field people that do this work, or do you use Public Works people?
A lot of times our rangers do that work. Yeah.
So, considering that it's gonna be County Parks people that do this, potentially there's some benefit in doing something that they do a lot of and have experience with. So I'd be interested in seeing what the treatments are that they do.
And I'm hearing it from you, from your discussion, that aesthetics are really important as well.
Yes. All right, it sounds like there isn't enough support for going forward right now.
No?
Okay. There's one other thing that I think we need to deal with, and that is the vegetated area. I went out and looked at it this afternoon, trying to figure out how much of it's riparian. And I think some small part of it is, so I'm glad we have Bill here. There's going to be a trade-off, and I don't know if this goes to the county or if this goes directly to the Coastal Commission, but it's been suggested to me, and I agree reluctantly, that we need to remove all of the vegetation that's there, because there are people trying to figure out how to politely put this, using the Avenue Portola drainage as a toilet. Urinating and worse is what I've been told. And they do it under cover of the vegetation that's there. And so I think the vegetation, because that whole drainage is just really nasty due to very low flow, and it's literally drainage for a good chunk of El Granada uphill that comes down Avenue Portola. The habitat value there has got to be indistinguishable from zero. And really.
When you say, or is it people that are hanging out at the beach or locals that are?
I don't know all the specifics. One of the things I've been told is the guys using the skate ramp, but I think it's more than that. Because, a lot of people for Surfers Beach park there, and then there's no restrooms because the past Harbor Commission would not enforce the lease requirement for the RV lot restroom to be open. But, in terms of what's best for the environment and public health and safety, the trade-off of losing what I think is a fairly small amount of habitat, but I'll listen to Matthew, in favor of eliminating the public health hazard of it being used as a toilet, I think we need to do that. And actually, the Harbor District 10 or 12 years ago had it cut down to bare dirt. Chris?
Quick point to that. My son and I were actually out, we don't pay him an allowance, so he collects aluminum cans. We were out in the ad hoc parking area, and I think there is some usage of that primarily for urination. I don't think there's too many people defecating there, but where there is a big problem, and this is where I don't think that clearing out that drainage will really help. It's to the southwest, of the ad hoc parking area. That area in there, the kind of the point down to the stoplight, is foul. I mean, you want to know where people are going to the bathroom, that's where they're going to the bathroom. There's much more cover there. There's toilet paper. There's just, I would not even let my son go in there. It's pretty gross. And so even if you cut that part, which I think there's habitat value, I also think there's some aesthetic value. If it's a nice little green strip, it breaks up the two pieces. I mean, there's some aesthetic value there. But I think the bottom line that I've observed is it's not going to solve the problem.
So, but it sounds like the solution is we need to get restrooms.
Yeah, and I know it's not your issue, and it's probably an MCC issue, but something's gotta be done with that, the Harbor District owned whatever you wanna call it, the trailer park, the
Yeah,
RV place
park.
over there.
Well,
Those restrooms, as far as I understand it, are public restrooms that need to be open to the public, but certainly on this side of the highway, cause we don't have the highway crossing yet, and there's not one now scheduled to be put in here. I think that in your larger thinking about this, we gotta have bathrooms, especially, again, if you're gonna put tables there and stuff, people are gonna be congregating, and then they're gonna be looking around, like, I just had my big iced tea, now what do I do? But I don't think clearing out that drainage will solve the bathroom problem.
In terms of the aesthetics, what if it was cut down to this high? You know, there's also, somebody pointed out to me, you know, the Coastal Act is filled with conflicting provisions, and, you know, another provision is views, and with the stuff as high as it is, it's a major cut into the view from downtown El Granada. And, you know, I'm always for green stuff, but I think, you know, if we cut it down to here, that kind of eliminates the cover, and also, you know, it should keep most of the habitat value.
Well, just another 2 cents and then I'll sit down. I'm sorry to jump in with it. I've always liked the vegetation there. Now I know, I try not to think of what the liquid is that's flowing through there, but it's, to me, it has a nice kind of, it really, to me, it adds something to it. Especially with the height, it feels like a mini little creek in there or something, you know, that I don't think I'd want my son like in there playing in it, but it's kind of an interesting little creek thing there, and with the high brush and the higher, you know, the different levels, and then the down into the creek, it does have a feel of a creek to me, and I think it adds like a little element of like you've got a couple of different elements in this small little space, and that's one kind of unique element that is already in place, and I feel like other parks would wish they had a little trickle of water running through with some vegetation, but that's just my 2 cents.
Dale?
I agree with Chris and Matthew perhaps that it's a riparian area. There's some legal constraints. The state in particular applies to such areas. But it's not just greenery. There are creatures that live there. There are salamanders, frogs of different types, and so forth.
Do you think there are actually those in that particular?
Well, maybe not down at the foul area, but at the upper reaches, where the water comes from down Portola, goes under the street, it goes under, what's it? No, not Obispo, but Alhambra, I think, up above. And then it comes across to Obispo, and it's farther down toward the beach from Obispo that the fouling occurs when you get close to the stoplight. So it could be, if hypothetically, say for instance, that eastern, you know, in working with the fire district and whatever is done to make use of that land south of the riparian area, that might be a nice, interesting walk to go through the riparian area, maybe go over a small bridge, then continue the walk to the stoplight, walk across to the coastal trail, and having some vegetation there with some sense of natural setting. Once toilet facilities are provided to the public, and additionally, once it's clear that this land is in use for public park use, if that ever occurred, then you know, there'd be no reason for people to go in the bushes to take a crap or whatever they do. I think it's not just cutting things down to a certain size or getting rid of the green stuff, because it's naturally going to want to come back, and it's a natural habitat that has some legal protection too.
I'd like to make a couple comments, please. I want to reiterate what Chris said about the eastern end of the property is even worse. I've personally observed at least 2 areas in there where people live. You know, there are homeless people who live in those eucalyptus and other trees.
long-term? Because
Well,
Delia pointed
I-
out one of them, but I can't see them now.
I haven't looked in there lately, but
There was a guy with a green tent,
there
which
was a
made it
guy
hard to
living
see.
with a tent who had a table set up and a
Like,
chair.
oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't see
And,
that.
Clothing drying in the trees. He was living there. And the other is, this is why I brought up, I think we want to do anything on the strip property. We need a really competent overall study of the wetlands and the restraints that will cause. Because I can think of at least 4 different agencies that define wetlands, and there must be more. And one of those is the Coastal Commission. As far as I know, they have a policy that you just don't touch wetlands. So that makes it.
But do you think there's
difficult to do
actually
anything.
wetlands there? There's some right here in
Guys,
Bridget.
Yeah, but
We don't need to talk
we'll
about
do
this.
conjecture,
Yeah.
because we're not experts here, so
Yeah.
if
So
I was
that's
gonna
what-
I agree
suggest
with
something
Matthew
like
on-
that, Matthew, that if we wanted to go
Yeah.
get a biological survey or whatever type of survey we need that shows us, here's what you can use, here's what you can't, I don't know really what we're waiting for, because we own the property,
Yeah.
so.
Well, the reason I bring it up is, like I said, there's trade-offs, and I don't see any straightforward way, without touching the vegetation, I don't see any straightforward way that we're gonna stop the inappropriate use there.
But again, it may be that we don't have the choice, that we're not allowed to
Maybe they'll
mow
put
it, just
that
because the
in.
harbor district mowed it
It's worried
down.
about that.
But it ends up in the ocean seconds later, 30 seconds later, it's in the ocean. And I think that, the Coastal Commission is charged with balancing competing interests in the Coastal Act. And I'd kind of like to toss this to the Coastal Commission and see what they have to say. So I don't know how we would do that. I did discuss this very briefly with Jonathan, which is why I'm even mentioning it, because, he pointed out the conflicting goals and how, one has to be balanced against the other one, and by explicit law in the Public Resources Code, the Coastal Commission is charged with resolving the conflicts. So would it be appropriate for either you or council to informally contact coastal staff and see what they have to say?
Yeah, I think so.
And I think Jonathan was gonna contact the staff in Santa Cruz. So, at this point, I would like to just, see an informal staff-to-staff discussion and,
Well, yeah.
See what they think.
Bill, why don't you guys contact them and ask them about this, and then if it comes to a further thing, we can agendize something at our next meeting that, I don't even know, we need to agendize it at the next meeting to go get, a price to do whatever kind of biological and other type assessment on that property.
and,
Yeah.
for those who don't know, I participate in, First Flush and Snapshot Day, both of which are once a year. And Snapshot Day, which is typically the first Saturday in May, that's one of the places we sample. And I got to tell you, when it's not raining, it's putrid all the way up to Obispo. It's really, really horrid to the point where, we don't actually want to go close enough to get the samples.
Larry, where does that drain to, if anywhere?
Drains onto Surfers Beach.
It does, but there's an actual
Yeah.
pass-through.
Yeah.
Okay, because a lot of times those are blocked up and they don't really, okay.
Oh, it's right out there.
Yep.
Can I make a suggestion?
Sure.
And this relates to the priorities that you, the board, would want to set for the communities. If this parcel, this piece of land is of such interest to eventually manage more actively as a park, I would suggest that you could begin some environmental assessment, some inventory, identify your site, what's called site constraints. Where can you put a picnic table or a path? If any place, if it's wetlands, you have to look at the local coastal plan. So start getting some of that base inventory, base information, and that's gonna help you make informed decisions on the future of that parcel.
Yeah, that's
For
what
a
we're
park.
talking about,
Yeah,
getting that
so I just
assessment, no reason why
Exactly.
we own the property, and at least we'll know what we can and can't do.
So, can we now just agree to give you direction to start that environmental assessment, or do we need a formal agenda item?
No,
and all that?
if you like, what you direct me to do is to go get some prices to do that assessment, whatever that assessment may be. The environmental people will know better than me.
Okay,
To see what kind of constraints we have on the property.
any objection to that?
Nope.
Okay.
Do that. And Bill will contact, Jonathan will contact Coastal Commission, talk to them.
All right, well, it sounds like we're done with this agenda item. I had actually left a message for Chuck because I wanted to modify the wording on the agenda item a little, but
And by the time I got it, we missed the 72
yeah.
hours.
But I heard from one community member that we should also discuss repairing or replacing the benches that are on the Balboa median. So I wonder if county parks could have one of the rangers go up and down the boulevard medians and survey the condition of the benches and write a quickie report on which ones can be repaired and which ones need to be replaced.
Well, that's a broader topic that's gonna tie in with the process of the newsletter and whatnot, because remember, we don't own that land. So
Right.
we can't just go and replace them even if we want to, so we're gonna have to talk with Public Works.
I have seen some of the benches actually being used for what they're intended for, so, there's some.
You can't sit on some of the benches because they're completely gone.
Right, and, that's why, some of those benches look to me like they may very well be half a century or more old.
They're a century old.
I believe it,
Yeah.
I believe it.
They were put
So,
in by the original developers.
I would like to set up something to move in that direction to deal with the, I don't know if they exist anywhere but on Balboa. Maybe the other one, I can never remember the name of the other one here. That's Avenue Cabrillo. Are there benches on that one?
Makeshift structure there.
Yeah.
Tree houses.
The golf ball.
So if, maybe you could report back to the board at a future meeting on what process we'd have to use to move forward on that?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna have to talk with, like I said, Public Works, so we know the process. We'll develop some plan, Marlene and you all, and then talk with Public Works.
We probably have to work out an agreement with Public Works to let us do a little more active management of the
Yeah, absolutely.
intended linear
And
parks.
we've discussed that at length with Marlene.
And there are trees in both ones, so be careful.
That's true, and they fall down.
The Widowmakers.
Well, more than a decade ago, Chuck Kozak, sort of a local expert, and he probably still works for Go Native, he told me that all the trees on the coast side, like El Granada and Montera, at that time, and remember, this is more than a decade ago, he said they're 90 years old with a lifetime of 90 to 100 years. So we're pretty much at the point of we're gonna see them all fall down in the next few years.
That's true of the Monterey pines and Monterey cypresses. Nobody knows how long eucalyptus trees live.
Too long, unfortunately.
Yeah, they could live 1,000 years.
But they fall down too.
Nobody knows.
They do fall down.
Yes.
Okay, we are at consent agenda. Is there anything to be held for discussion? I have one change that I'd like to suggest for the minutes.
All right, thanks.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you for.
So I guess we have to hold the minutes from the consent agenda.
Is it something substantial?
Well, I don't know. I hope not. So is there a motion to approve item 4, the January 2015 warrants, item 5, December 2014 financial statements, item 6, assessment district distribution number 6-14/15?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. No discussion on consent. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. On item, on the minutes, item 3, under action agenda, item 2, It says Supervisor Horsley's aide Nicholas Calderon spoke regarding the supervisor's interest in a project to prevent erosion and preserve the coastline area south of the harbor. I'd like to suggest that the correct wording for that, instead of preserve the coastline area south of the harbor, it should be protect SR1 by Surfers Beach.
Okay.
Everybody agree with that change?
Sure.
All right, so is there a motion to approve the minutes with that change?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Who was
opposed?
that, Rick?
Motion carries 5-0. Item 7, committee reports. Okay.
They go into a LAFCO meeting next week. So that's all.
Item 8, attorney's report.
No report.
Item 9, general manager's report.
Kind of combine it with the engineer's report. Kennedy Jenks has finally wrapped up the CIP plans and technical specs, so we're looking at going out to bid for those sewer line replacement projects next month.
Okay, can we sneak into the newsletter what streets are planned and approximate time frame?
Probably rather not, honestly, because I want to keep it focused on parks, so
Okay.
I don't want to sully up the sewer business.
How quickly we forget.
Actually, you know what I forgot to mention on the agenda item 2 here is one of the things that I think is real obvious is if we have our office building, meeting room, possible community center on the post office lot, that on the first floor of that would be restrooms for at least our community park. That seems really obvious. I hope. Is that it for
Yes.
managers and engineers report? Administrators report?
Nothing further.
Okay, we're at the end of the agenda, so we are adjourned.